Hi everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Celtic View Podcast. I'm Ryan Maher and as ever I'm joined by our Celtic View editor Paul Cuddihy. Paul, how are you? Enjoy the weekend's action?
Yes, I enjoyed it very much so, and I'm looking forward to later in this podcast when we can look back on our predictions from the weekend.
Don't start, please. That's the last thing I need just now. We've got quite a few things coming up on the podcast. Paul spoke to Callum McGregor about his upcoming autobiography, which is coming out this week. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And yeah, as Paul smugly said, we've got a predictions game at the end, which you may just be beating me in. So maybe we'll get to that. But there's only one place to start, Paul, and that's Saturday with the 6-1 victory over Hibs. Of course, James Forrest getting his 100th goal for the club with the hat-trick. We'll get onto him more specifically in a moment, but just in general, in terms of the game, it was a superb performance, wasn't it?
It was brilliant. I mean, it was really enjoyable, and I think when we really click, I mean, the football we're playing is great, and you can feel it around the stadium. You know, obviously there's the goals, it's relentless attacking, but you can feel that ripple of excitement because people are actually enjoying what they're watching. And I thought, I mean, Hibs started quite brightly in the first couple of minutes and committed some men forward. But I think once we get a grip in the game, it was just non-stop. And, you know, 6-1, I actually flattered Hibs, I thought. And I think they know that as well. I mean, I think their manager afterwards, who, you know, obviously, I think the big talking point was his dodgy coat that he wore to the football game, but he absolutely slaughtered his team. But I think he probably, really, on reflection, should be grateful that it was only 6 because, you know, we were absolutely relentless. And it was brilliant. It was a really enjoyable day.
The last couple of league games prior to that were both 2-1 victories for Celtic against Motherwell and St Johnstone. And I think a lot of people externally were looking at the results and going, are Celtic on a little bit of a blip? But actually, when you take the performances in those games and put it up against the game against Hibs, it's been so similar in terms of the chances we've created, the performance. The difference in Saturday, we just took our chances.
Well, we spoke about it before in the podcast. There was a game, I think, last season where we'd beat Motherwell, for example, 1-0. Tom Rogic just scored the goal. I had no recollection of the game, but in the course of a season, you're not going to beat teams 6-1, 9-0, 7-0 or whatever it is every single week. But the idea, it's quite funny actually that people, as you mentioned, from the outside are saying Celtic are suffering a blip, but we still won the games. I mean, we went into the game on Saturday having won 8 of our first 9 games. We're 2 points clear at the top of the table. So the idea, I mean, I think sometimes it's manufactured by people who want to kind of create some sort of, as if it's a crisis. It's a bit like, you know, we had a defensive crisis last season, which if we get that every year, I'll be really pleased because we have a really impressive defensive record, which we do again this season. But again, people like to manufacture these things. But I think what the manager's very good at is just making sure that the outside noise stays on the outside, and when the players come out on that pitch, they're just focusing what they want to do, and on Saturday it all just clicked into place.
Because that brings up 10 games in the league so far this season, which is quite a good point to kind of look back on the league campaign so far. And when you do compare it to last year, the manager always talks about progression. You can see clear signs of progression in the team, where this time last year I think we're maybe a good like 4, 5, 6 points behind.
I think maybe even more actually. I mean, because I think it was after 7 games, we'd won 3, lost 3 and drawn 1.
Yeah.
And we went into a really important month of October, and I think everybody was looking at, I think we were due to play at Pittodrie, Easter Road and Fir Park, and thinking we have to win them all, which we did. So there's definitely been progression. And I think because of the way the team's progressed, because of the way we're playing, when we do have a blip, a real blip, as in losing 2-0 against St Mirren, it becomes a big thing because it's so unexpected. I think as fans, we go into every game thinking, well, we're going to win. And I'm sure the players do as well, but we're a bit more blasé about it, obviously. That obviously doesn't happen. You know, there are blips along the road in football, but, you know, we're really on the right path. And I also felt there was a kind of element of, I'm not sure if frustration was the right word, but certainly because of the manager in his pre-match press conference had touched on it, the fact that if anybody didn't think, for example, in relation to a European campaign, that we didn't deserve to be there, then they were coming at it with a certain agenda, because the only questions he's been asked after the 4 games is about the chances that we haven't taken. which would, as he said, indicates that we actually were performing well, we're creating chances, we're maybe just not taking them. So I think there was maybe part of that saying, right, we'll just go out there and show these people what we can do, and they did that.
Yeah, because I think in terms of the European run so far, I think in previous campaigns, we're talking about the chances we're missing, obviously because we're creating them. But I think in previous seasons gone by, we weren't even really creating chances. And games that we look back on that we did win, you look at Barcelona's and Man United's, you don't remember those games and you don't remember the hatful of chances we had. You just remember the scoreline at the end, which was obviously amazing. But again, it just shows the sign of the progression in the team, that we're going to these games in Europe and we're competing against these types of teams. We need to talk about James Forrest. I think quite a few of us were maybe having a bit of a joke beforehand. Knew he was starting, thought, could he get a hat-trick? Could he get the 100? As soon as he got that first goal, I think everybody felt he's going to end up doing it. And just such an incredible achievement from such an incredible player.
And I mean, it is absolutely incredible. I mean, the fact that he's only the 30th player in our history to score at least a century of goals is absolutely remarkable. When he made his 450th appearance during the week against Leipzig and had a really good game when he came on. I think sometimes he's maybe, to an extent, an unsung hero. I think sometimes he's maybe underappreciated by some Celtic fans, you have to say that sometimes. And I think not so much just James as a person, I think sometimes at those positions, the players that play out wide for Celtic tend to come in for more criticism, because they're expected to beat players all the time. They're meant to create chances and score goals, and when that doesn't happen, then maybe they sometimes get some criticism. But I think in any way you want to gauge a Celtic great, James Forrest ticks all the boxes. I mean, the amount of appearances, the amount of goals, the amount of assists, the amount of trophies, and the longevity as well, that, you know, different teams have come in, different players have come in, different managers have come in, they all play him because he brings something to the team, and I think it's just remarkable. And I was so pleased, and he's such an unassuming guy as well. I mean, what I like about him, and, you know, Callum McGregor as well, both academy boys that have come through the ranks, there's a humility about them. They stay away from the limelight, they're not on social media, they just want to play football. So it was brilliant. It was one of many, it was the highlight of the weekend, and it made for a really great day.
I think that longevity is key to it, because particularly in that position, I think when Forrest first broke through, he was a player that was all about his pace. He's had to reinvent himself over time. He's now 31, I mean, he's still not that old. And again, you can see now he's starting to kind of reinvent his game that little bit more, and still such a crucial part to the team. And I think now going forward, given the fact he's just scored a hat-trick, his confidence is going to be sky high as well. And you know he's just going to be really crucial to the team this season.
I think he always is, and, you know, I think what's really great, when you look at those wide positions, you've got him, and then when he comes off, Maeda comes on, who's been excellent. You've got Jota, who wasn't playing at the weekend. Haksabanovic was excellent in the first 45. Maeda comes on, down that left-hand side, he scores a goal. So we're really strong in those wide positions. I think James's experience is just incredible. And again, another thing which I think over the years, not just maybe this season when he's maybe not been a regular starter, and that's maybe happened at various periods in his career, but you never ever hear anything about any discontent, any grumblings. He just obviously just puts his head down, works hard every day, thinks really popular with other players, and I think he just leads by example. And I think he's a great player. I think sometimes maybe it's only in years to come that people will look back, and certainly when the next generation are looking at the statistics, they'll say, "Oh, did you see James Forrest play?" And you'll be able to say, "Well, yeah, I saw his entire career from that when he scored that first goal against Motherwell right through to whenever he does finish." That's a privilege as a Celtic fan.
Yeah, 100 goals. He's got more than 100 assists as well. And I saw something on Twitter this morning, actually, just looking at that longevity in terms of when he scored his first goal, and they're comparing the ages of some of the players in the Celtic team at the moment. And I think like Abada was 7 or 8 when he scored that first goal, and Jens was 9. And, you know, it just really shows how long he's been doing it, and it's just incredible to see. And as you said, for somebody that is such an unassuming person and such an amazing one club man, to reach that feat and to be celebrated in that way is amazing. In terms of just the game in general as well, obviously Giakouamkis got a couple of goals in a different afternoon. We're speaking about him. Maeda came in, got an important goal for himself as well. But I suppose for the manager's point of view, the fact he did make so many changes and we got such a good performance, Moy was brilliant as well, it must have just been a perfect afternoon for him.
Yeah, I mean, during the Celtic TV commentary when Tom Boyd and I, towards the end of the game when we were discussing, maybe this, obviously James Forrest is the standout, he's the man of the match, gets the hat-trick, 100 goals. But there was not, I think you could have made a case for quite a lot of the players, if not all of them. I think it was just a really good team performance. And I think what's encouraging as well, as you mentioned, you know, someone like Aaron Moy comes in, he was excellent. Alessandro Bernabei, you know, it's a couple of games in a row where he's, you know, well, not in a row, but last weekend is against St Johnstone, he delivers the cross for Giakouamkis to score. His ball for Giakouamkis' first goal the weekend was excellent. And again, what it does is give competition for places, because I'm sure he's watching the games thinking, if I'm going to try and get in the head of Greg Taylor, I need to be really good, because Greg Taylor's been exceptional this season. So I think that just adds to Anthony Ralston, some of his passing, and particularly that second half, he was carving Hibs open. Again, he knows what he has to do to try and dislodge Josip Juranovic. So I think the whole thing worked really well at the weekend. And again, I think, as I say, you could feel. The funniest thing I thought at the weekend was it was a brilliant performance. Everything about it was great. We loved the football. At the end of the game, there was some boos ringing out, and the people who had watched it without realising, they'd be saying, "Why are the Celtics? So it must be really hard to please. If their team's just scored 6 goals." But then obviously, it could only be like a referee that could somehow manage to manufacture 60,000 people booing at him after a game that must have been the easiest game in the world to referee.
Yeah, well, remember, that was the last league game without VAR, so that's all going to change from next weekend, and we're all going to be singing and dancing.
We should really warn people that actually next week's podcast will all be about the VAR controversies at Tynecastle.
2 hour, VAR debate. It builds into another big week. The weeks just always seem big at the moment. There's so many games. No Champions League this midweek, but we've got Motherwell away in the League Cup on Wednesday before we then go to Tynecastle away on Saturday. So a couple of tricky games. In terms of the Motherwell one that's up first, of course, we're defending champions of the League Cup. The challenge now is to go and defend it, and you just get the sense with the team at the moment that they just take on all these challenges, and you just have every confidence that they'll live up to it.
Yeah, I'm old-fashioned actually. I don't think you're champions of a cup competition. I think you're the
Okay.
holders. Right. I think that became a phrase last season when another team won the Scottish Cup, and somehow that made them the champions. But anyway, I think it's, you know, you always go into these games confident, and I think last season it gave the team such a boost. You know, new manager, new captain, effectively a new team. They win the first trophy, and then all of a sudden they're winners. And that gives you a real springboard. You know, I think it's slightly different when you're playing a team like Motherwell in the cup competition, because there's nothing for them to lose, particularly at home. They're not, you know, they are the underdogs. So I think it'll be a really tough game actually. I think they'll really go at it, and you know they dug in here when we played them recently. We absolutely dominated in terms of chances, but they have a couple of players, Kevin Van Veen in particular, who is a good goal scorer and who gives teams problems. So they'll be quite relaxed about it, I think, because they're probably thinking, well, I would expect Celtic to win. But you know, this Celtic team, they'll be absolutely determined to make sure we're back at Hampden again. Yeah,
and then after that, as mentioned, it's an away trip to Tynecastle on Saturday in the lunchtime kick-off. Our first appearance with VAR in the league for ourselves, so yeah, they can't pick a better fixture for it. No. Hearts away is always just one of those occasions where you feel like it's always a tricky venue to go to. Hearts at the moment, though, the squad seems so stretched with the number of games that they've been playing in Europe. They lost at the weekend as well to Aberdeen. So again, going into that one on the back of last season, going to Tynecastle and getting a really impressive result as well, I'm sure they'll be going into it full of confidence.
Yeah, and it's interesting, I think teams like Hearts, maybe when they end up playing in Europe, as they're doing this season, and then Thursday to Sunday games, they're maybe for the first time are starting to appreciate the demands that are put on teams like Celtic, because it's just a regular thing that we do, and they don't have the strength and depth. So anytime they get any injuries, they're struggling. So it wasn't, although we maybe didn't quite predict an Aberdeen victory the weekend, it maybe wasn't the most surprising result. But Tynecastle, I know over the years from interviewing ex-players, Tynecastle is always their favourite ground, away ground, because the stadium, the stands are right on top of the pitch. There's very little gap between the touchline and the stands. It creates a great atmosphere. There's obviously a level of animosity whenever we come calling, which is why it's also sweet to win there. So yeah, I think it's a big game. I think it's a good game. As I say, I think everybody's interested, not just in our game, but in all the games, to see how VAR kicks in. But we'll see what happens.
What do you think? What do you make of it?
I think from the example of, two things from the example of England is, initially there are going to be teething troubles because, marrying the technology with the officials at the game and the officials watching it wherever they're watching the game, that's going to take a wee bit of time, and they're going to have to kind of refine the way they do it. And you can see what's happened in England, that they've maybe changed the way they've made some of the calls. I think you can look at any given weekend in England, and things like offsides and what have you, there's obviously a certain level of technology which is similar to goal line technology. So even though it might just be a couple of inches that somebody's toes offside, technically then they are, it's quite harsh. It's the other decisions which are still open to interpretation. So a referee might make one call, someone watching it elsewhere, do they interpret it the same? Do they interpret it differently? When the referee's called over to look at it, does that mean he's automatically going to change it? Because they made a big thing in England recently of a referee having the strength of character to go over, have another look at the incident after being advised to do it, but then sticking to his original decision. So it's not going to, I think, as we've seen in football elsewhere, it's not going to suddenly erase all mistakes, and it's just a different thing for us to feel a sense of injustice about, I think.
It's one of those things that you always highlight when it goes wrong, but there are a number of occasions where it's right. I think the Leeds-Arsenal game at the weekend, Leeds get a penalty for what was a real blatant handball. The referee doesn't give it and has to go to VAR. So if that's not there, obviously Leeds didn't score the penalty anyway and they lost the game. But if you didn't have VAR, Leeds fans would be going away saying, we should have had a point in that game, the ref didn't give a blatant handball. But for me, it's a way a lot of the time when they'll freeze frame it or they'll slow it down. It's like, football's not played at a slower pace than that. It's not played stop-start. You've got to kind of view it in the action it's meant to be.
It's the balance, because obviously referees are seeing the game at full speed, so sometimes they maybe don't see something, or the incident's passing the blink of an eye, so they have to make that snap judgment, and that's in theory where someone with all the different camera angles and being able to slow it down can sometimes see something. So you see it sometimes with some really late tackles that are given yellow cards, and then retrospectively. That Leeds game was interesting because there was also a VAR incident at the end where Leeds got a penalty and Arsenal got a player sent off, and then VAR looked at it, realised it was a foul against Arsenal in the first place. But what was interesting about that is the red card incident should still have stood, because the guy still kicked the Leeds player. So, but again, that's referees interpreting it. So I think we are just going to end up, people are going to be fed up listening to us moaning about VAR in weeks to come.
There'll be nothing to talk about when VAR's in. It'll solve everything. Paul, this is a big week for yourself and for Callum McGregor, because his book is coming out, which you've had the pleasure of helping Callum put together. Just tell us a little bit about the book, how it all kind of came about.
Yeah, it's called The Making of a Celtic Captain, which is maybe an obvious title, but I think he, and to an extent James as well, they're part of a rare breed of footballers nowadays who, start an academy. So Callum was 9 when he joined our youth academy, and 20 years later, almost in a nice symmetry, he becomes the title-winning captain of a Celtic team. Now that happens so rare in football anyway, so it's telling that journey of him from from growing up in the East End of Glasgow. And I think that's the other aspect of it, is that he's just an East End boy. When he used to play with his big brother out in Springboig, from a big hill where they played, they could see Celtic Park, and that was his aim. That was like, even as a wee guy, he's thinking that's where I want to be, and he ends up in our academy system, and there's a lot of talent there. And I spoke to his first coach at Celtic. I spoke to the person that scouted him, and obviously with hindsight they can say, well, you could see he had the talent, which he obviously did, but when actually Callum explains his story, there's so much more to it. There's the amount of hard work, the amount of dedication, over and above all the talent, the sacrifices he's had to make, the support and the sacrifices his family's had to make, it's a brilliant story, and I think because it's got that brilliant ending of going from like a wee guy who just gets spotted and somebody sees this, the scout Robert Wilson thinks he's a player, and then we see what's happened over the years to him becoming the first team player. But it's fascinating. There's obviously been highs and lows along the way, and he kind of tells basically how he's got to where he is now.
Yeah, I think that title, The Making of a Celtic Captain, is so fitting because throughout the book, one of the main takeaways from me is how much of his childhood has really kind of shaped the type of person and the player he is, and the work rate and the drive that he has. That's evident from such a young age, and it's just something he's always had in him. So it really is a fascinating read. Comes out on the 20th of October, so if you've not pre-ordered it yet, then make sure you get your copy in the Celtic stores then. And you had the chance to speak to Callum this week as well.
Yeah, just to kind of catch up and just to talk about it, because one of the things, as you say, there's so many different elements that Celtic coaches over the years can help him with and develop his technique and his tactical awareness and his game awareness. But you have to have that, and I think for all players to get to that elite level, they have to have that drive. I think the role of his parents is fascinating because they had a meeting initially with Tommy Burns, God rest him, and he was kind of speaking to the parents about saying to them, you're so important in this journey, and they got it right away. They realised that they had to be all in to help him, and they've been absolutely incredible. And Callum makes a point, and I think it applies to James Forrest as well. Tommy Burns had that great saying about his greatest achievement as a Celtic player was staying here for so long, because if you're not a good player, you don't, and that's an indication of how good that they are. But I say, Callum, I just wanted to, obviously people will read the book. It's the perfect Christmas present for every Celtic fan, because it is not only does it tell his journey, it goes into detail about how to play, how he sees the role of a midfielder, which is fascinating as well. A wee bit about how what he does away from the game as well, and it was just a chance for him to kind of explain a wee bit about his Celtic journey.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, let's hear your chat now with Callum McGregor.
Callum, your autobiography, The Making of a Celtic Captain, is out this week. I know you're always in the moment, you're always looking ahead, but what was that experience like of having to go back and tell your Celtic journey?
Yeah, I think we've obviously sat down, had many conversations over the sort of summer and pre-season, and like you said, took the time to sort of reflect on my career so far, and yeah, kind of surreal really, in terms of what we're used to is just purely being in the moment and just looking forward to the next training session or the next game, but to actually sit down and sort of relive some of the memories from growing up, and obviously trying to put that into words, and obviously the book's now out on Thursday. It's kind of surreal feeling a little bit.
And even the cover of the book itself tells a story, because there can be few footballers in the game who are able to have that picture as you have of the wee guy at 9 years old in the Celtic Youth Academy all the way through to being the title winning Celtic captain, which is a remarkable story.
Yeah, absolutely. When you like you said, the front cover of the book just tells you what the story's about really, and like you said, to be that young kid in the academy, at a huge club and a huge chance to become a professional footballer, and to fast forward nearly 20 years to last season in terms of lifting the trophy as captain of the club, then it is a remarkable story, something that I'm hugely proud of, and a lot of work's went in over those sort of 20 years, a lot of work, a lot of sacrifice, and the club have been absolutely amazing for me, so to actually have that journey and put it down on paper now is really special.
I mean, you've living the dream of all of us as supporters, the East End boy. You see Celtic Park when you're a wee boy out playing with your brother, you think that's where you want to be. So few players are able to fulfil that dream. But again, are you able to kind of think of how far you've came, or are you just, you've got so much going on just now that it'll only be later even that you start to really think about it?
Yeah, I think so. We've obviously spoke about that a bit in the book as well, where you never really get the chance to reflect on in terms of what you've done or what you've achieved. You're just always in the moment, just on edge about the next game or the next training session, and you just want to give everything. And I think I talk about a little bit of that in the book as well, where you probably don't get to that level of success, if that's all you're thinking about, you know, you have to just apply yourself every day, train as hard as you possibly can, and when the games come around, give absolutely everything. And if you do that, then, you know, 9 times out of 10 you'll be successful, and that's when the success will come. So it's, you know, it's never really a chance to sort of look back and think, oh, you know, that was a brilliant pathway or whatever. It was just loving football and just loving the opportunity to try and become a footballer at this club, and that's, you know, now sitting down looking at the book, that's what 20 years of hard work have got me.
And one of the things that, again, when everybody reads this book, that will strike them about you is the importance of your family. And there's so many different aspects that go into becoming a footballer, as you know. And one of the key elements is your family. And from the word go, you know, they had a meeting with Tommy Burns, and they got it right away of what they needed to do to help you, and it's brilliant to see that aspect of it.
Yeah, exactly. You'll see bits of that in the book about how important they've been, and the support network around me. Like you said, it's not just about what you do on the pitch or what you do when you're at the training ground. It's everything. You need that support network around you as well. And like you said, with that first meeting with Tommy, they absolutely understood straight away, you know, how big the opportunity was that I had, and, you know, never for a second were they going to let me waste it or, you know, not realise the importance of it. And again, in the book, it talks about how important they were in my journey as well.
But that thing you say about, you know, your parents didn't want you to waste the opportunity, but you grasped that as well, because one of the illustrations in the book is your first kind of report card, and Martin Miller, your first coach, he observes that even after a few months in the academy, he realised that you were a boy that knew you had this great chance and you weren't going to let it go by. So there's obviously something within you that realised that this was a great chance for you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Of course, you know, when you love football the way that I did and the way that I do, you get the chance to go and train at the centre, and then you get into the academy and you see how big an opportunity you've got. That, you know, of course you're at the start of the ladder, but, you know, that dream is there, and there's a possibility of getting there. So I think if you don't apply yourself and give 100%, then, you know, you're wasting the opportunity that millions around the world would have loved to have had. And
that's something that applies to even to this day. It's just part of I suppose it's a mantra that you do every day you get up.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, you said it there about living the dream. That is exactly what I'm doing. You know, I never see it as a job. It's, you know, it's the best thing that a young man can do is go and play football for the club that he supports and the club that he loves. You know, what better can you do with your day than get up and go to work and pull on that jersey and represent millions around the world. So, you know, of course that comes with responsibility as well and pressure, but, you know, I love that side of it as well. And like I said, to me, it's, you know, I would never dream about doing anything else.
And, you know, in talking to you for this book, and we'll not give any spoilers in terms of the importance of your parents, but, you know, for me, your dad's one of the unsung heroes of particularly when you're going through the academy, in terms of motivating you and challenging you. And I mean, I'm in awe of him, actually, for the fact that he and your mum grasped what they needed to do, and there's some brilliant stories in there.
Yeah, there is. My mum was actually saying that to me the other day, that she was asking me when the book came out, and I said I'm pretty sure at some point next week, and she said, you know, I'm a little bit worried about how your dad's going to come across in this book. But like you said, obviously once you read the book, you'll see what the stories are about. But, you know, like you said there, the importance of how they understood, one, you know, the opportunity that I had, and two, how to get the best out of me. You know, that's my dad's best skill, I think, even to this day. He understands people, and he understands me. He knows when to push and where to prod me to get the best out of me, and the stories in the book certainly tell you that.
Now, in terms of your journey as well, it's not been a smooth path to becoming a Celtic player, because obviously there's that period where you had to go down to Notts County for the season. That was obviously a key year for you as well in terms of giving you that experience, because you came back and, you know, there's a change at this club, and that's the springboard for you. Yeah,
absolutely. You know, football is all about timing as well. You know, you have to arrive at the right time, and obviously, you know, I was on the bench and sort of in and around the first team, but I wasn't really getting an opportunity, which I've said, you know, many times, is there were some top midfield players at the time, really at the top of the game. you know, the club were in Champions League, doing really well. So you just got to bide your time and wait. And you know, when I got the opportunity to go down to Notts County and play regular football and understand what first team football's all about, then you know, I was really excited for that as well, to go down and see what the level was like, see what I could do and sort of man's football as it were. And I loved my time down there as well. You know, it gave me a real platform and a springboard in terms of confidence and belief in myself as well. And then when we came back, obviously things changed a little bit here, which then gives you a sort of opportunity to get in. And then, like I said, at that point, I tried to make the most of it, and thankfully that I've managed to do that.
Yeah, in terms of your debut, Ronnie Deila gives you the debut. It's a dream debut because you know you've lived in that dream. It's the first of what you hope is going to be many appearances, and you mark it with the only goal of the game over in Iceland. Yeah,
exactly. You know, you couldn't dream a better way, really. You know, the team win, you get your first start, and obviously score a goal to be the winner. So it's a brilliant start and a dream start. And like you said, at that point, you know, you've sort of ticked off that dream of playing for Celtic, but you know, very quickly it becomes about, you know, how can I progress and move forward and just get more and more appearances under my belt. So, you know, it was a brilliant taste of that success, and it just sort of whet my appetite for more.
And even that first season, you know, there's the highs of breaking through the first team, scoring the goals, winning your first trophies, but then obviously towards the end of the season you picked up an injury, and that's part and parcel, as you know just now, of being a footballer.
Yeah, exactly. You know, there's never ever going to be a smooth road, you know, and especially when I broke in, I understood that as well, you know, to come in to this level, the size of the club, the expectation, the pressure, everything, you know, there was always going to be ups and downs, and like you say, when you get an injury and it sets you back, then that's where the mental side of the game comes in, where you've got to shift your focus and worry about your recovery, you know, do your stuff in the gym and just sort of stay mentally strong till you get back. So there was a lot of challenges in that first little period for myself, and like I said, you just got to stay strong and get through it. You know, you're learning all the time, new experiences, and you have to take them all on board, and you know, then hopefully get to a level where it sort of levels itself out, and you can get that consistency on a more regular basis.
And that comes for you at a period where the club, we were already in a period of success, but then it's just taken to a different level. The 4 consecutive trebles, you're at the heart of that. That's incredible for any player, as much as it was incredible for fans to watch.
Yeah, of course. You know, when Brendan came in, it sort of really elevated the level of the club and springboard back into the Champions League, which then, you know, attracted more and more players as well. The squad gets stronger, and you know, I've touched on it in the book. You know, the mentality of the group at that time was a real ruthless group of players that understood the chance that they had and wanted to make the absolute most of it. And along with, you know, some really good coaching and management, then we managed to take the club to a sort of different level in terms of domestic success, which was brilliant to be a part of. You know, it was a really enjoyable sort of period in my career, and definitely for the club as well. So, you know, that definitely took us to a new level and something I think all the players really enjoyed.
Yeah, because I think you mentioned, I think it was the double treble you scored in the cup final. Again, a dream for anybody to score a goal in a cup final for Celtic at Hampden. And then to top it all, we get the open top bus back to Celtic Park.
Yeah, again, you know, I think I've spoken to you about that before, that, you know, it's one of the best days I've had in football. Scoring a goal in the cup final, you know, we finish off another treble, which was a double treble at the time. You know, a big bit of history was made, and then obviously the open top bus going back to Celtic Park, just the streets were lined with Celtic fans. It was an incredible day, you know, something that will live with me forever. And
I think what they'll enjoy about the book is the kind of the honesty about, you know, the highs and lows, both personally, but then obviously for a club, because, you know, we go from all that dominance to the COVID season, which we were tempted just to leave a blank page because nobody really wants to read about it. But I think when people read about it, they'll appreciate the fact that you kind of take it on what went wrong that season. Yeah, I think it was important that, you know, we took the responsibility, because, you know, ultimately us as a club and us as players have to take responsibility when it doesn't go well. You know, we're the guys that go out onto the pitch, and, you know, there was numerous factors within that probably didn't help us in terms of the success that we wanted to have. But
you know, when you step onto the pitch, you still have the responsibility to find a way to win. So I think it's important that we recognise that, you know, the players, one, probably weren't at the level in terms of performance-wise, and then, you know, we really struggled to get to grips with the whole sort of COVID thing, and like I said, we probably just didn't quite understand the way we had to behave, or the way we had to really hone in and really be disciplined around that side of things. So, you know, it's important that we do take responsibility for it, and we learn from it as well, and we learn from it as a club, and I think we've done that, which is the good thing, because, you know, in life everybody's going to make mistakes, and it's about how you bounce back from those mistakes and learn from them, and ultimately become better for them, and I think hopefully we've done that as a club as well.
Now, the book's called The Making of a Celtic Captain. When Ange comes in as the new manager, you're appointed the captain. And what was interesting, you know, your parents both are interviewed in the book, and your mum made the observation, and I think even one or two of your teammates did as well, is it's a big thing to take on the responsibility of the captaincy, given what happened the previous season, the demands, but then also you're following in the footsteps of a Celtic legend and a legendary captain. But you kind of embraced that.
Yeah, of course. You know, you're not silly in terms of when you accept that responsibility. It's a big responsibility, given what had just happened, given who you're succeeding as well. And this club's always known success. So when you take that job, you have to deliver success, and of course you understand all those things, and you then take the mantle of, you know, now I've got to be responsible for what happens at this club and for the success that this club's got. So, you know, I just seen it as a challenge, though. I seen it as I've had a lot of learning curves in my life and in my career, and I felt like, you know, I could do the job in terms of taking that responsibility. I have enough experience now in football to understand the lows and the highs, and never really get too high or low. So you have to have that consistency about, you know, one, your work, and two, your personality as well. And in terms of when things are going well, you know, you keep everybody level, and when things aren't maybe going so well, you know how to pick people back up and get back on track, because ultimately, you know, what happens in this building and what happens every day, then that'll get the team success. You know, everything, all the external noise, as people trying to put you off and trying to distract you, you know, we have to be super tight, and as a group, we got to trust each other, and then when we go on the pitch, that'll show as well. So it's about having all those kind of experiences as well, and I obviously talk about, you know, Bruni in the book in terms of being a brilliant teacher of what that role looks like. So to see him doing it for many years, and follow him about the building, and see how he speaks to people, how he manages people, then, you know, it was so invaluable for me. You know, good times, bad times, you see how these guys operate, and like I say, when I accepted that responsibility, then I felt like I had a good teaching in terms of him being the guy that I looked up to, and I thought, right, okay, I think I've got enough in my locker here to go and do this job, and, you know, so far it's been a reasonable success.
It's interesting, Scott writes the foreword in the book, apart from kind of slagging your haircut. your haircut and your fashion sense at the start, but he speaks really, obviously he's known you your entire Celtic career. So I think he finishes off the foreword by saying he couldn't think of somebody better to honour the armband. So when somebody like that, who's obviously your friend as well, that's a nice thing to see.
Yeah, of course, I just read a little bit about it there, actually. But, you know, like you said, we're close, we're friends. But, you know, this is business as well, so, you know, you don't get anywhere in football with friendship. You have to be able to do the job as well, and you know, for somebody like him who has so much success at this club, and, you know, is held in such high regard as obviously a Celtic legend, which he absolutely is, you know, and to see someone like that put words down on paper about you, then, you know, it gives you a little boost as well in terms of, you know, he believes that you can do it as well.
And obviously as captain, and it's how the book starts, is it gets to the end of the season and you're the guy that comes on the pitch, we're the champions, and you get to lift the trophy. It's a team effort, as you'll be the first to acknowledge, but just for you and for your family, for that moment, that must have been really special.
Yeah, it was. Of course it was. You know, like you said, firstly, you don't have that moment if the team aren't successful. So, like I said, it's about what we do in this building every day. We build that trust with the players, and we build understanding and relationships, and then we show that on the pitch, and hopefully that will make us successful, which then gives everybody the individual glory that they want as well. So, But to get that moment at the end of the season, obviously the boys had put so much work and effort and sacrifice throughout the season to get us where we wanted to be, which was back champions of the league. Then to get that moment, obviously to lift the trophy above your head was just something incredibly special.
The Celtic fans are going to be reading the story of you growing up, your journey through the academy. Some of your thoughts on the position of midfield, which is absolutely fascinating. I'm slightly apprehensive about asking you this question. Have you actually enjoyed the process of doing the book?
No, it's been good. Obviously we've had a lot of chats, but a lot of hours have been into it. But you probably get a sore head more than me, right enough. But no, it was good. I really enjoyed it. Good to speak about different aspects that you probably don't normally speak about as well, and good to probably give people an insight into what's inside your brain and how you process football. And I think a lot of the book is probably psychological in terms of how I see football and how I prepare and do all these things. So it's good to talk about that as well, and hopefully that'll give the supporters an insight into what life is like for us players in terms of representing the club.
I mentioned the fact that there's very few players in football that can tell the story of joining an academy and working their way through to become a successful player at the same club. You've done it. We're lucky enough to have another player who is a teammate and a friend of yours all the way through your journey, in James Forrest, and you'd have been in the stand at Celtic Park on Saturday. There seems to be no end to what James can do. A hat-trick to score 100 goals, only one of 30 players in our history to do it. It's quite incredible.
It's incredible. I was absolutely delighted for him at the weekend. I think if you asked him, could you dream up a perfect scenario to get to 100, then I think that would have been it. Super player. He has been for many years. Probably touch on that in the book a little bit as well, actually. But his consistency levels over a period of time at this club to keep performing, keep scoring goals, keep getting assists, continually, putting yourself out there and giving your absolute all for the club. There probably wasn't anybody happier than me when he hit that hat-trick at the weekend. And he's a special player, like you said, one of 30 at this club that have done it. And you think of the names that he's in good company with there as well, and also you think about the amount of players that have played for this club to be in that category is something really special. And I spoke to him this morning, he's still buzzing, he's on cloud nine.
But I think because humility is a key that runs through your book, and it strikes me with James as well. Interestingly, both of you are two players that completely stay away from social media. It's all about just focusing on your football. So even though he's achieved this incredible milestone, just another incredible milestone, he's very humble about it, even on Saturday. And I'm sure even though he's buzzing in here, there's nothing that he never gets carried away with it.
No, exactly, and that's a brilliant trait to have as well. Humility in football get you a long way, because people are either trying to build you up or knock you down every other week, and he's just got this brilliant consistency level where nothing phases him, and like I said, to produce that quality over a number of years and still be humble about it is incredible to think. But that's one of his personality traits, is he's as humble as they come, and really delighted for him, absolutely buzzing for him.
Yeah, so just a reminder that the book comes out on the 20th of October, so yeah, really is a must read. Paul, at the weekend there was no B team in action on the weekend. The women's team were in action against Glasgow Women on Sunday, and it's a 7-0 victory, something we both predicted actually. It just goes to show again, they've not conceded a goal still in the league. The women are scoring a barrel load of goals. Everything is just going really positively at the moment.
Yeah, it was an interesting game actually, because I think the majority of the goals came in the second half. So I think obviously we spoke about it last week, the Glasgow women's team, it's their first season in the top flight, so they're taking a wee bit of time to adjust to it. Obviously defensively at the weekend they made it difficult for Celtic in the first half, but I think the longer the game goes on, just the quality that shone out in the end. And I think there was also, there was the 7 goals, it keeps up this incredible start of the season. There was a couple of the young players, I think there were only 2 of the players were only about 18, they both made their first team debuts, which I think is great for them. I think it's great for the girls' academy that, again, the young players that are coming through can see that pathway So I think there was so many positives from it, and it's a busy week for the women's team this week.
Yeah, it is a busy week because on Wednesday they travel to Dundee to take on Dundee United in the league, and then at the weekend it's the League Cup for them where they host Spartans. In terms of the Dundee United game, Dundee United so far this season played 7, won 2, a couple of draws in there as well. But I suppose it's just with all games that they're midweek, when you've got that little bit of travelling when they're away from home, they just kind of have that feel of being that little bit more difficult a lot of the time, don't they?
Yeah, and it's not something that necessarily every week the women's team are not playing the 3 games in a week, so that's a different challenge as well that maybe have more of an impact next weekend in the cup game. But I think obviously the confidence must be absolutely sky high at the moment. I mean, they're more or less unbeatable at the back, and then as you say, are scoring so many goals. We had obviously Clarissa Larissy was a guest with you in Celtic TV at the weekend, spoke really well. I mean, it must be the dream season for her at the moment, because I think that's her double figures in terms of goals for Celtic. She's been capped for her country, scored her first goal for Canada last week as well. So everything's going well, and then to top it all, she gets an appearance in Celtic TV with you.
Doesn't get any better than that, does it? The game against Spartans on the weekend, obviously Celtic won the League Cup last year, so they're reigning, not champions, reigning holders of the cup. But Spartans, again, I think we touched on it a couple of weeks ago, they're always a test for Celtic women's team and just in general in the league in Scotland. So I'm sure they'll be full of motivation though to go out and to try and make sure they keep a hold of the cup this year.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think last season was phenomenal, winning both cups in different circumstances, and I think winning the League Cup gave the team the confidence to go on, and I think that had an impact on what ultimately happened in the Scottish Cup. Spartans, we spoke about it before, I think when we played them, they're always a really tough team. They're just below the kind of top 3 or 4, but they make it difficult, and it's very rare that you see them getting really hammered, that they are quite a dogged team. So I think, again, it's kind of similar to the men's team, and it's a cup game. It's a slightly different thing for the opposition, so there's nothing for them to lose. We'll go in as favourites, not overwhelming favourites, but particularly being at home. But again, I think the team's full of confidence, and I'm sure that we'll progress to the next round.
Yeah. Let's get into the predictions. Something that I know you're excited to get into. So last week, you got 2 correct scores right. You predicted the Ireland women's team would beat Scotland 1-0 in that World Cup playoff, and that Celtic women would also win 7-0 against Glasgow women. I got 1 correct score right. We both predicted the same one as well. So in terms of the standings at the moment, the fan we had on last week didn't get any correct scores right, but got quite a few of the results right. So at the moment, you're sitting on 12 at the top. Your supporters are sitting on 10, and I'm on 8. So I've got a bit of catching up to do. So hopefully this week is a week I can start climbing the table a little bit more, because I'm starting to get a little bit concerned about my ability or my knowledge in football.
With age comes wisdom.
This week we've got John Thomas on to predict from the fans. He is from Belfast but lives in Galway, and he's been a Celtic supporter all of his life. He said he used to travel all the time in the ferries over, and he's very much looking forward to this one. So he's actually also probably the most optimistic Celtic fan I've ever experienced before, which I absolutely love, as you'll find out in the results when we get through them. So first up, let's take Celtic's trip to Motherwell on Wednesday in the League Cup. What's your thoughts?
I'm going to go for 3-1 to Celtic.
3-1 for Celtic, okay. I'm going to go for 2-0. I think we've not get a clean sheet in a little while, and I think Wednesday night's going to be the night that we get it. And John's went for 5-1 to Celtic.
Excellent.
Yeah, love
it.
I
hope John's right, actually.
Yeah, I know. Honestly, I hope he's right in pretty much all of these, because he's went for a lot of high scores. I'm going to take another League Cup game, Kilmarnock against Dundee United. Tricky one, because Kilmarnock lost at the weekend, Dundee United as well, got a little bit of form, but...
I'm going to go 2-1 Kilmarnock, simply on that horrible plastic pitch at home. That might just swing it for them.
John's also went for 2-1 for Kilmarnock. I'm going to go, I know obviously a team has to progress, but I'm going to go for one each over the 90 minutes. And then I don't know who's going to win in penalties, but I think the actual result will be one each. I don't know. I think Kilmarnock kind of struggling to get goals recently.
And it's going to go to penalties.
It'll go to penalties.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's my prediction. Dundee United, you don't know what one's going to turn up. Got a couple of good results of late, so we'll see with that one. Then the women's trip to Dundee to face Dundee United midweek as well. What's your thoughts?
I'm going to go for 4-0 to Celtic.
4-0, okay. John's went for 4-1 to Celtic, and I'm going to go for 3-0 as well. Just think they're going to continue that run of not conceding a goal in the league. There's lots of games this midweek, so the fourth one we're going to take is down in England, and it's Man U against Spurs.
Man United against Spurs. I'm going to go for 2-1 to Spurs.
Yeah, it's going to be a clean sweep of predictions for Spurs to win, because John's went 3-2 to Spurs, and I'm going to go for 2-0 as well. Spurs are doing well at the moment, and Man U, again, you don't know what's going to turn up.
Antonio Conte's a really good manager. I mean, it's kind of like similar to Mourinho. He's never going to be lauded in years to come for the fantastic football the way that Guardiola is, but he makes his teams so difficult to beat. And if you've got people like Harry Kane and Son up front, then you're going to get goals.
I know, and Neil Lennon's side almost got a result against Man U last week as well. Yeah. So looking ahead to the weekend's action now, and Celtic women at home to Spartans.
I will go for 2-1 to Celtic.
I've went 3-1. John's went 6-1. Yes. Celtic. Yes, brilliant. And
that's ridiculous. We're working for a club. We're much more cautious.
Oh, I know. I love the optimism. It's brilliant. And then for Celtic, first team against Hearts on Saturday, the lunchtime kickoff as well.
I'm going to go for 2-1 again for us in that one as well. We're going to get the winner. It'll be either a dodgy VAR penalty, or it'll be a goal that it'll be a VAR decision that will win it for us. And then next week we'll be going, VAR's brilliant.
So I was literally going to say, we're sitting here chatting saying, we're going to end up discussing about how bad VAR's been. We're going to get VAR in our favour on Saturday, 90th minute or something to win the game. I'm going to go for 3-0. Again, just Hearts have been on the wrong end of a lot of big score lines recently, particularly at home. They've not been that strong. I know in Europe they're playing against like Fiorentina and things, and it's always going to be difficult for them, but still things aren't looking too great for them at this moment. And John has went for 4-0, so brilliant. And finally, just one other game from our Scottish Premiership this weekend is Motherwell against Aberdeen.
I think it will be 2-1 to Aberdeen.
Yep, clean sweep for Aberdeen's, because John's went for 3-1, and I'm going to go for 1-0 for Aberdeen as well. They got a good result at the weekend against Hearts. But yeah, I think it might be quite a tight game. Hopefully next week we're sitting here and I can say I've jumped ahead of you, but I've still got a little bit of catching up to do, so we'll see.
It's going to be a long season.
Yeah, exactly. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Exactly. Yeah, thanks very much for joining us again on this episode of the Celtic View Podcast, and do join us again next week. Thanks for now.